Every single morning, you throw something away. A coffee cup, a plastic wrapper, leftover food. You toss it in the bin, the truck comes, and you never think about it again. But one man looked at that exact moment and saw something nobody else did. He saw gold, not metaphorical gold. Real, life-changing, empire-building gold. And while the rest of the world held their nose and looked away, he leaned in, built a machine worth billions, and quietly became one of the most powerful men in America. His name is Wayne Huizenga, and this is the story of how your garbage made him rich. If you've never heard that name before, don't worry, that's exactly the point. Wayne Huizenga is one of the most successful entrepreneurs in American history, and almost nobody talks about him. He doesn't trend on social media. He doesn't give motivational speeches on YouTube. He built 3 separate Fortune 500 companies from scratch in 3 completely different industries, and yet he remains one of the most invisible billionaires the United States ever produced. Why? Because his first empire was built on trash. Literal, stinking. Nobody wants to talk about it. Trash. And in America, we don't celebrate the man who takes your garbage. We just expect him to show up and disappear. Wayne Huizenga showed up. He never disappeared. Before we go deep into how he did it, I want you to do something for me right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This channel is dedicated to the stories that never make the headlines, the fortunes built in the shadows, the empires hidden in plain sight. If that sounds like something you want more of, you belong here. Now let's get back to the man with a garbage empire. Wayne Huizenga was born in 1937 in Evergreen Park, Illinois, to a family with Dutch roots and a relentless work ethic. His grandfather had actually been in the garbage business before him, which tells you something important. This wasn't luck. This was a pattern. A family that understood something most people refuse to accept, that the dirtiest work often holds the cleanest profit. His father was a real estate developer, his mother was a homemaker, and from an early age, Wayne absorbed a lesson that would define his entire life. You don't wait for opportunity to knock, you find it where others aren't looking. He didn't finish college. He dropped out and took a job driving a garbage truck in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. That was 1962. He was 24 years old. He was borrowing money from his father-in-law to keep the truck running. And while that sounds like a story about failure, it was actually the beginning of an obsession. Wayne Huizenga fell in love with the mechanics of the garbage business in a way that most people would find hard to understand. He wasn't just hauling trash, he was studying a system. He was learning the routes, the timing, the pricing, the relationships with city governments, the contracts, the margins. He was reverse engineering an industry that everyone else treated like background noise. Within a few years, he bought out his partner and began acquiring other small hauling companies. This is where his genius really begins to show, because Wayne Huizenga understood something that the economics textbooks call consolidation, but that he called common sense. The garbage business, like many service industries, is only profitable at scale. One truck, one route, one man barely survives. 100 trucks, 100 routes, a coordinated system. That becomes a monopoly, not illegal, a natural one. Because once you own the routes, the contracts, the disposal facilities, the equipment, and the relationships, nobody else can compete. You become the only option. He called his company Waste Management Incorporated, and by the late 1960s, he was acquiring companies at a pace that alarmed his competitors and delighted his investors. The strategy was elegant in its simplicity. Find a small garbage hauling company, offer the owner a fair price, usually paid in waste management stock, integrate the routes and equipment into the larger system, cut redundant costs, expand the margins, move to the next city, then the next state, then the next region. By the mid-1970s, waste management was operating across the entire United States, Canada, and eventually internationally. The company went public in 1971. The stock exploded. The man who once borrowed money to keep a single truck running was now a very, very wealthy man. But here's where the story gets interesting. Here's the part that nobody tells you when they teach you about entrepreneurship in school. Wayne Huizenga's real genius wasn't in the garbage. It was in understanding that infrastructure is invisible power. When you own the pipes, the roads, the routes, the contracts, you don't need to advertise. You don't need to charm anyone. Cities, counties, neighborhoods, they come to you because you're the only option that exists. He had built a system so deeply embedded in daily American life that removing it would be like removing running water. Your trash has to go somewhere, and he made sure that somewhere was always waste management. By the 1980s, waste management was pulling in billions of dollars in revenue annually. Wayne Huizenga's personal fortune had made him one of the wealthiest men in Florida. And then he did something that genuinely surprised everyone. It worked. Hawaii, not from wealth, not from business, but from trash. He sold his controlling interest in waste management and started looking for the next invisible industry. The next thing that everyone needed, and nobody was properly serving. He found it in video rental. He bought a small chain called Blockbuster Video in 1987 when it had fewer than 20 stores, and applied exactly the same strategy he had used in garbage. Acquire, consolidate, systemize. Scale. In less than 5 years, Blockbuster Video had over 3,000 locations and was the dominant force in home entertainment. He sold it to Viacom in 1994 for nearly $5 billion. Take a second and let that sink in. The same man, the same strategy. Garbage to video rental. $2 billion empires built from industries that polite society didn't take seriously. If you're watching this and you're thinking about your own business, about something you've been putting off because it doesn't sound glamorous enough, I want you to pause right here. Drop a comment below. Tell me what industry you're overlooking because it doesn't sound impressive. Because if there's one lesson from Wayne Huizenga's life, it's that the fortune is almost never where the spotlight is. It's in the unglamorous, overlooked. Everybody needs it, but nobody, wants to talk about it corners of the economy. That's where the real gold is buried. After Blockbuster, Wayne Huizenga didn't slow down. He built AutoNation, the largest chain of car dealerships in the United States, using the exact same playbook for the third time in a row. He also bought the Miami Dolphins, brought Major League Baseball to Florida with the Florida Marlins, and brought the NHL to Florida with the Florida Panthers. A man who started driving a garbage truck at 24 years old ended his career as the owner of 3 professional sports franchises. No one else in American history has ever owned 3 sports franchises simultaneously while also building 3 separate Fortune 500 companies. No one. But let's go back to the garbage for a moment, because there's a deeper story here that most documentaries miss. The story of waste management is not just about Wayne Huizenga's personal success. It's about the architecture of the American economy and how it actually works behind the scenes. The waste management industry in the United States today generates over $90 billion in revenue every single year. It is one of the most recession-proof businesses that exists. Think about that. When the economy crashes, people stop buying cars. They stop going to restaurants. They stop booking vacations. But they never stop producing garbage. The garbage economy is the most reliable economy there is, because it is tied to the most basic act of human existence. Living, you live, you consume, you discard. That cycle never stops. Huizenga understood that the businesses attached to that cycle, the hauling, the sorting, the processing, the disposing, would always be necessary, and therefore always be profitable. He saw the geometry of it before anyone else, not because he was smarter than everyone in the room, but because he was willing to be in a room that everyone else refused to enter. There's a concept in business called the adjacency premium. It means that when you dominate one essential service, you gain disproportionate power over adjacent services. If you own the garbage routes, you can offer recycling services. If you offer recycling, you can partner with manufacturers who buy recycled materials. If you control the landfills, you can negotiate with municipalities for decades-long contracts that guarantee revenue regardless of economic conditions. The garbage business isn't just about garbage, it's about access, relationships, and infrastructure. Huizenga built all three simultaneously, and the result was a moat around his business so wide that competitors couldn't cross it. Here's something that very few people talk about when discussing waste management's rise: the environmental regulations of the 1970s and 1980s. Regulations that many business owners at the time fought hard against actually accelerated waste managements, as the government imposed stricter rules on how garbage could be handled, transported, and disposed of. Smaller operators couldn't afford to comply. The cost of compliance was too high for a two-truck family business. But for a company with waste management's scale, those regulations were not a burden. They were a barrier to entry. Every new environmental rule that small operators couldn't afford to follow pushed another customer directly into waste management's hands. Wayne Huizenga didn't just profit from your trash. He profited from the complexity of managing it legally and responsibly in a way that smaller competitors simply couldn't match. This is the hidden lesson of the trash billionaire. He didn't just build a company. He built a system that the modern world required, a system that could operate across thousands of miles, comply with hundreds of different regulatory frameworks, handle millions of tons of material, and do it all with a level of operational discipline that turned an industry built on chaos and smell into a clean, predictable, profitable machine. Wayne Huizenga passed away on March 22, 2018, at the age of 80. He left behind a legacy that is almost impossible to quantify, not just in dollars, though the dollars were staggering, but in the lesson that his life teaches, that the most powerful businesses in the world are often the ones nobody wants to think about. The businesses that serve the daily, invisible, necessary functions of modern life. Garbage, transportation, housing, water, energy. These are the industries where the quiet fortunes are made. Not in the spotlight, not in the viral moment, in the truck that shows up before you wake up and takes away the things you no longer want. And here's the final thought I want to leave you with. Right now, today, in 2025, there are versions of the same opportunity that Wayne Huizenga saw in 1962 hiding in plain sight. They're in waste energy technology, in electronic waste recycling, in the management of the mountains of data and digital waste that the tech economy produces, in circular economy models that turn what we throw away into new raw materials. The infrastructure of disposal, of management, of handling what the world no longer needs is being rebuilt from the ground up, and the billionaires of the next generation are already watching, studying the roots, learning the systems, and preparing to build the next waste management. The question is whether you're watching too. Before you leave, I want to ask you one thing. If you found this story valuable, if you walked away thinking differently about where wealth actually comes from in this country, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with the entrepreneur in your life who's looking for the next big idea in all the wrong places. Share it with the person who thinks the only way to get rich is to build an app or go viral. Because the man who built the biggest garbage empire in American history never went viral. He just showed up. Every single day. He showed up, he drove the route, he studied the system, and he built something that outlasted the trends, the recessions, the competition, and the critics. That's the real gold mine, not the garbage. The discipline to see what's valuable where others see nothing at all. This has been the Trash Billionaire. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you're new here, and we'll see you in the next one.